So can you explain to us what TMJ is, please?
Okay, TMJ stands for temporomandibular joint. TMJD, as many people will be probably searching for, is temporomandibular joint dysfunction. So the temporomandibular joint is here, between the temporal bone, which is one of the cranial bones, and the mandible, the lower half of our jaw.
So what are some symptoms that somebody might experience with TMJ?
Yeah, so pain probably is the number one thing, and that may be localized here, or it may radiate sometimes into the ear or down further into the face. May be accompanied with headaches and migraines or upper neck problems, which again gives us a clues. Clicking is a very common symptom, as is sometimes a sense of inability to fully open the mouth, or even sometimes fully close and oppose the teeth. But generally pain is probably the most prevalent symptom.
So what are some causes of TMJ?
All right. Again, I think it's helpful to maybe categorize them a little bit. Generally, I think if there's mechanical trauma, as we're taking a history as to the onset of symptoms, if we see mechanical trauma directly to the TMJ, then obviously that can be a cause of problems. So for example, significantly long orthodontic work. It's not uncommon to find that people have orthodontic work where maybe there's some kind of a long period of time, maybe an hour or so, where their jaw is held open. Another time is obviously things like, you know, a blow to the face, if somebody's involved in a fight, or perhaps if they fall, bang their head on something. And another common cause, mechanically at least, is things like road traffic accidents, whiplash. A lot of crash test studies have shown on the mechanical dummies and on cadavers that if you during an accident, as the head goes backwards, the jaw will actually often dislocate and then pop back in again. It's extremely common. We probably wouldn't know about it other than we don't have whiplash and everything would be pretty sore. But it's, again, in understanding maybe what's going on with this and what's caused the problem, then mechanical injury like that is important, because that may dictate. It's more, in my experience, a lot of people will come in, there is a little meniscus, there's a little disc inside the joint, and often people come in and think, oh, well, they need surgery, and they go on Dr. Google again and find out that there's a disc and they might require surgery. I have to say, it's a very, very small single number percentage of people that require a surgical intervention for TMJ, in my experience. The disc can become dislodged, but generally only if there's significant trauma. If there's a mechanical incident, then yes, there could be some disruption to that meniscus within the TMJ, but really, if there's no mechanical injury, then that won't occur. So what else can cause it? Other biomechanical problems. I've seen patients sometimes where if we start to think in terms of connective tissue and fascia, how if our sort of foundations aren't quite right biomechanically elsewhere in our body, then sometimes, you know, that will affect higher up. You know, the roof tiles of the house will fall off if the foundations are wonky, and so we have to look lower down. I recall one particular patient who we were able to resolve most of his problems, and then just towards the end of his treatment he said, I'm absolutely fine, but it comes back a bit when I've been running. So we then did some gait analysis on the treadmill and then discovered that there were some control issues around his leg and his hip and his pelvis. And when we corrected those, then that meant that there wasn't a ripple-on effect going on upwards into the top of his neck and jaw. So yes, biomechanical problems lower down could need to be considered. We mentioned the neck there a little bit in terms of tension. People who have migraines, headaches, neck problems will very commonly go with problems with the temporomandibular joint. And simply tension and abnormal tensions around here can create problems with the way in which the mandible will move. A good percentage of the muscles that actually move the mandible are actually attached deep inside the front of our cervical spine and attached to the front here. So if there's abnormalities going on at the top of the neck, then that can give us some clues at least that there's a connection between those, and perhaps these muscles are not functioning quite right, and that will cause us jaw problems. I'd say though the biggest problem with temporomandibular joints is there's nearly always an element of stress. It may not be entirely stress, but there's nearly always an element of stress, and where we hold our tension, clenching of the teeth, grinding of the teeth at night, these things are extremely common with TMJ, and again when we look at the onset and the history of onset of symptoms, it's extremely common to find, particularly girls actually, during sort of GCSE time and A-level times. I'm still not quite sure why it seems to be more young girls than young men. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, that some kind of significant life event causing them stress might be, that's where their attention goes, is to here as opposed to somebody else, and it goes to perhaps their tummy and gives them IBS and so on. So looking at that pattern is really important. Why? Because then really, if that's the end result, then we need to look to managing their stress, we need to look to understanding what's going on in the body, and maybe get into some trauma work. Put some links below to some of the other videos that I've done on trauma and its impact on the body. So what about treatment? Well, sometimes we can use local work, intraorbital work, so we'd glove up obviously, and there can be muscles like the pterygoids inside the mouth that we might need to try to release to get some kind of change in tension. Masseter muscle here, which is very commonly tight, and actually has been shown to be one of the first muscles in the entire body to tighten up in response to stress. We're not quite sure why. Some theories suggest it's a snarl response from our sort of primitive days, or it's our body's sort of innate intelligence that clenching our teeth might help us not get knocked out if a blow comes or we fall or something like that. So, but intraorbital work to release the tension of the muscles can be very beneficial, particularly in those stages when it's really painful, really locked up. And there's been many occasions when we've been able to actually get people to sort of open their mouth much more freely, or even close their teeth properly and eat properly, just through doing that kind of work. Again, the clues are in the history, as I always say, and so if we've got something where the neck is involved and the musculature of the cervical spine is involved, then we'll need to look at that relationship and treat the neck alongside treating the jaw. We mentioned biomechanical problems. Obviously, if there's some control issues or biomechanical issues that might require orthotics, or some kind of treatment to a concurrent problem such as a lower back problem that you've thought was disconnected in some way, then it may be that, given our holistic approach, we need to look at all of you and say, well, actually there's a connection in these issues and the tension that's going on that's creating the jaw. And so without trying to press these other issues lower down, any attempts to treat the jaw will be fruitless. Again, it may be that we need to do some cranial work for some of the musculature which is higher up around temporalis, which also has an influence on controlling and moving the jaw. So cranial type treatments can be sometimes useful. And in terms of stress and trauma, if we are holding our patterns of tension there, then we may need to use a variety of nervous system and trauma release work, deep psycho-emotional work, to maybe understand the real origins of where that tension is coming from, and help the body to discharge maybe some of that tension that's manifesting as the jaw. Of course, finally, it wouldn't be right to not mention the occasions for surgical intervention and or injection. And obviously, we do have relationships with maxillofacial surgeons, and very occasionally it's necessary to go and scan that or consider surgery. But I can reassure people that I can't remember the last time anybody actually required any surgery. It's extremely rare. So thankfully we can address most of the issues conservatively with physiotherapy.
Does TMJ ever fully go away?
So that's a great question, Isabel. Yeah, does TMJ ever really fully go away? The answer is yes. I think, does anything ever really go away? I think we're an interesting creature, and often where we hold our tensions, it takes a really long time to get these things to go away. But without question, yes, I have hate the word cured, but you know, it really cleared people of all of their symptoms that have gone away and stayed away. And as ever, I think, you know, the deepest resolutions and the longest lasting resolutions come from a really thorough, holistic understanding of what's going on. But yes, you can get rid of it. Okay, thank you for listening, and I hope it's of some insight into what can be a very painful and upsetting and troublesome condition for a lot of people. Just want to say, you know, don't feel helpless, and I appreciate that not every physio is particularly skilled in treating the TMJ, and so please reach out, give us a call if we can help you, and if you've experienced TMJ problems or if you have any comments, questions, then please leave them in the comments below. Like and subscribe this video, and please share it with anybody that you feel might benefit from listening to it. Thanks again, and see you again. Bye bye now.